All right. Well, first of all, thank you to Vance Thompson Vision for inviting us. We're excited about this. And she already introduced us. Plus, Montana's a pretty small optometry community, so a lot of you do know us already. But I'm Dr. Robyn Clausen. I practice in Billings. This is actually my husband and my business partner, David Bauer. And this is our practice manager, Krystin Hansard. So the three of us have actually worked together for about 15 years. And during that time, we've learned a lot, sometimes the hard way, about the fact that culture doesn't get good by accident. You have to put a lot of effort into learning what to do it, how to nurture it, and how to communicate it to your team ongoing. It's never done. So in the last 2 years, we have had the privilege to work with some different practices and organization on their culture. And one thing that's very interesting, everybody in here has different size practices. We've worked with some big companies, some small companies, and the same problems show up everywhere. Every organization deals with misunderstandings, missed expectations, things that just don't go well or become more stressful than they need to be because people didn't communicate clearly. So that's where we're going to start today, is how do you take some communication tips back to your practices. There's nothing worse than going to an exciting lecture and then you go home and say, that was really fun, but I can't do anything about it. So we're going to give you some tools. I won't lie, they're a little bit cheesy. So have fun today. Be willing to laugh at yourselves. But these are tips that can help staff interact with other staff, they can help docs interact with other docs, and they can help docs and staff interact together. So, first thing I want to ask, and based on how the day's gone so far, I'm fearful that nobody will interact, but we're going to try it anyway. What actually is organizational culture? Because that's kind of a buzzword the last several years. Everyone says we need a better culture. What does that actually mean? You could throw out one word even. Cohesiveness, someone said, yes. I'll share a little story that helped us understand we need to better learn what does culture mean. Do any of the practices out here do an exit interview when an employee leaves to go to a different organization? Very good, at least one person. We would encourage you to do that. It can make you feel pretty exposed, but you learn a lot. Krystin, our guru, it's easy for me to say you should do that. I've never had to do one. Krystin does it for me. But she asked for feedback, and for many years she would say, how do you feel about our culture? Because the three of us always had made an effort to make a good culture. And we really had done a good job. COVID threw a wrench in things. I think everyone in here knows culture's harder now than it used to be, and we'll get into that a little bit. But for years and years, if we had someone move on, it was because we had developed them and grown them, and they were ready to do their next thing. And Krystin would ask, what do you think about our culture here? And it was always positive, but it really meant nothing. It was very vague. There'd be words like, oh, I like it, or everyone's really nice, or you taught me a lot. And it's like, well, yeah, we did, and you do have nice teammates, but what is actual culture? So we worked hard to kind of define what should culture actually be. So with organizational culture, think of it as, how does a team actually operate? How does that team collaborate? How does a team solve problems? Everyone in our organization knows that you don't get to just complain. You get to come and say, this isn't going well, here's what I think we should try. So we call that, we train our team to try to be solution-oriented, not problem-focused. And that can be a hard switch for some people, but the more you work on them with it, the happier they are. A lot of people will say culture is fun. And one thing we want to point out is, if you have a strong culture, if you've worked hard on your culture, it probably really will be fun. Fun doesn't make the culture, though. A good culture allows you to have fun. So don't confuse those two. We want you to have fun at work, do things outside of work, have a great time, get to know your teammates, but the culture allows you to have fun. It's not the fun means you have a good culture. And then also, it's something you always have to work on. Especially with turnover. In this day and age, you have more new people than you used to. You have people that are new more often than it used to be. So you have to remessage it all the time, or your culture will drift a lot. So that's how we would define culture. It's how you work on things. We kind of hinted at this already, but it's harder than it used to be. We would say that for two reasons, and I'm guessing a lot of people in here would agree with that. Who thinks patients are harder to please now than they used to be? You're right.
Those were some fast hands.
Yeah, we got some interaction. This is not good, bad, right or wrong, but the reality is who also thinks employees are harder to please than they used to be? So, Susan had mentioned we worked with a coach, and we shared that coach with them a couple years in. And he saw a shift in the workforce a long time before COVID hit, and he knew that there was going to be this shift. And so he really worked with us on our mindset of what are we going to do about that. And we'll tie into that a little bit today too. He said you can recognize that you're going to have employees that don't know things that you think they should know. So you have a choice. You can get bitter and hate what you do, or you can learn to train them and you can be really proud. So I would encourage you to do that. And the things we'll teach you today, we do really want you to go back and teach them to your team, because it will make their lives easier and your lives easier while being in your practice. So higher patient expectations, realize that those are affecting your turnover. Your front staff gets yelled at more than they used to, and that's not right, but it's reality. So help work on a strong culture so they know they feel supported, they know you've got your back, and help train them on how to handle those hard situations. So let me see where we are.
We weren't smart enough to have confidence.
Yeah, we didn't know
here,
there's
and
gonna
so
be
we're
notes
like,
there.
great, we have our notes.
I was going to say just one more thing before I hand it off to Krystin. We talked about you can get bitter, you can get better. A lot of people are still stuck right now and thinking, I wish it would go back to the way it used to be. Quit hoping. Hope is not a strategy. Do something about it, and be a better communicator. So if you take nothing away from today, communicate better with your team. So I'm going to hand off to Krystin, who will talk about what we call creating a common language in your practice to make communication better.
Okay, so like Robyn said, I'm Krystin Hansard. We have worked together for 15 years, and probably at least 12 of those I've been the practice manager. So we have worked together from the time we were in a tiny basement office where there was 5 people total. And we've worked together through building a new building and adding 3 associate doctors and growing our team. And that honestly has been our biggest challenge, is managing our growth. It's a good problem to have, but it's still a challenge. And the challenge was keeping our team and our doctors on the same page, keeping them aligned. So I want to start with just a quick show of hands. Who has ever felt like they've been misunderstood at work? You know, you said one thing and they heard another thing. I mean, that's happened to me. Or who has been scared to bring something up because you thought to yourself, man, I am gonna make this worse. Yeah. And be honest, who's been afraid to maybe just approach a coworker or approach a doctor? I know I've been in that same exact boat. Those moments are so common. They're so common because they tie back to the same challenge, which Robyn was talking about, which is communication can feel threatening. And it's not because we as people don't care. It's because we don't always know what to say or how to say it in a way where it's gonna land well. And the thing is, it's not getting easier. It's actually probably getting harder. Communication is struggling because people avoid. They hope the other person just figures it out. They hope the problem goes away. We under-communicate. And the other thing is, people aren't naturally great communicators. If you are, that is amazing, that's impressive, but that's not a skill that most people have, especially because they don't teach communication in school. the way that they teach math or science or reading. So people are going through life just figuring it out, and they're often picking up bad habits along the way. So that's tough right there. And then I'm not gonna beat a dead horse because we've heard about this time and time again, but we live in a digital age. We communicate through text and through email, and we send emojis and memes. We take shortcuts and we forget that there's a person on the other side. So when we go to have a face-to-face conversation, especially if it's a tough one, we struggle. We don't necessarily have the confidence or the skills for that conversation to go well, so we try to avoid it. And then Robyn mentioned this too, there's turnover. So 10 years ago, when I started, 15 years ago, you might be working with someone that you've worked with for years. So you've developed a relationship, you have an understanding, you're more than willing to give that person the benefit of the doubt, assume the best of intentions. But in today's age, the person that you're working next to might be there for, days or weeks or maybe months at this point. So you don't have that trusting relationship because trust takes time to build. And time is a luxury that teams don't have these days. So I'll ask Robyn's question again. Are you going to get bitter or are you going to get better? Because what if there was a way to make communication feel less threatening, to make those conversations feel safer? People would be more willing to have them. They'd be more productive. That's what common language does. That's what we're gonna be talking about today. Common language is a shared set of tools and definitions and words. So the team is on the same page. It's like giving everybody the same playbook. Nobody has to guess how communication works in your office. No one has to guess what the expectations are. And when communication feels safer, it's easier to collaborate. It's easier to share ideas, and it's easier to listen. So the result of all of those things is trust. So you can speed track that. And then the ripple effect is the team member or the team experience improves and the patient experience improves right along with it. Because patients can feel when the team dynamic is off, when the team isn't communicating well, and they can tell when a team is connected. I know that I've walked into a business and felt like the vibes were off. The team wasn't communicating well. So that's why this is so important. The way that your team functions, the way that your team communicates directly impacts the care that our patients can receive. And that's why we're really excited to share these things with you. We've got 3 tools today, and they're simple. Like Robyn said, they're simple, they're easy to remember, and if you implement them, they will change how your team communicates together, and it will improve the culture and the care that your patients receive. So David's gonna get us started on our first one.
So Krystin was talking about you can feel vibes when you go into a practice or a business. And my dad recently had cataract surgery with Russell. Thank you. Fantastic surgeon. And when you walk in there, if you've never been to Vance Thompson, just ask to go. Just sit in their waiting room, follow a patient around. You can tell the vibes there are amazing. They intentionally work on their culture, and you feel the difference. So hats off to you guys at Vance Thompson at all your practice locations. But the first thing I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to put it on the slide yet, but how many times have you as docs or as managers, if there's some managers in here, are like, I wish my staff knew how important this was. I wish they knew how to greet the patient better. Or, I wish they would just do this better. Any of that through here that you've seen? Have you ever told them how and what your expectations are? So sitting up here like this right now, James is in our practice. I am very ADHD, so sitting here calmly is very hard for me. So I'm the one that gets the interactions with the office or the audience today. So I'm going to ask for 5, maybe 6 if somebody wants to be brave, to come up here. We won't go on the stage, but I need 5 volunteers. And if nobody volunteers, I will just pick people out. So, who wants to volunteer? We'll come down here. I'm not going to jump because
It won't be scary, and no
it's not scary.
answers are wrong.
It's not embarrassing. So, if I don't get any volunteers, I think is Nick in here from Vance Thompson.
Yeah. Nick, yes.
He'll be a good one.
Colonel Mustard.
Colonel Mustard, come on up.
James.
James, you want to go even though
There
we're
we
practice? Perfect.
And sorry, I only know so many of you by name in the audience.
I think I
Ryan
saw-
and Lindy, come up.
Oh, there we go. Who else do I know? I know Kelsey, but Kelsey, you want to come up? Do you want anybody else from Vance Thompson to come up? We have 6. 6 will work. How about Dee Dee, Dr. Dee Dee? I heard you really wanted to have your presentation first today. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick exercise. It's called ice cream truck. And the reason we do this is that last sentence there, the most common form of miscommunication is under communication. And like Robin said, or Kristen said, we are all poor communicators. I have yet to meet an amazing communicator 100% of the time. I'm a terrible communicator too. Ask Robin. It's rough. But I'm going to ask you guys, or I'm going to say a sentence. Simple sentence. I'm going to have you close your eyes when I say it. And the audience can participate too. You don't have to give your answers. And you're just going to envision what I'm asking you. That's all you have to do. So let's close our eyes. If the audience wants to do it too, great. Ready? Sally heard the ice cream truck. She went to get her money. I'll say it again. Sally heard the ice cream truck. She went to get her money. So now I'm just going to ask I'm going to have you all take the microphone. So Dr. Dee Dee, tell me what you saw.
Sally was going back to her place to get money for the ice cream truck.
Do you know what color the ice cream truck was?
Yellow.
What about her? What was she wearing?
Pink dress, white flowers.
And she went back to her house? You
Yeah.
said? What did her house look like?
Blue house, white shutters.
Okay. Did she go anywhere inside of her house?
Living room.
Okay. And then where was the money?
In the little bowl that's on the side table.
Perfect. And that's Ryan. Your turn.
Wow, I didn't have that. That was not as visual as I had.
What did you see?
I saw a little girl who heard the ice cream truck, so I was envisioning the little song that they play when they run through the neighborhood. She ran inside the house. I envisioned just a little kid's purse, and she found her 50 cents to run back out to get to the ice cream truck before it was in the neighbors around the street.
Did you have anything that she was wearing or what her hair looked like, or not quite there?
I did not get there. No,
That's okay.
I thought you were going to quiz me about what were you saying. So I was paying attention to your
That's
words.
okay. See, under communication. So let's hand it to James.
I saw a redheaded girl with pigtails. She pulled out her wallet. She pulled out some fat stacks, and she went up to the ice cream truck.
What? Any more details?
She was wearing jeans, and she was just sitting on the stoop in front of her house.
Okay.
And so she had money on her.
All right. And then we've got Doc Bryant. What did you see in your mind?
Yeah, mine was very like 80s.
Okay.
So yeah, she was sitting outside playing, and then she went into her house and found her piggy bank. And I want to say it was like a blonde girl.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what she was wearing.
Did you just have any visions of the ice cream truck or what?
I only did when she said yellow, and I was like, no, white and blue.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
No,
Perfect.
initially.
All right. Nick.
Just a little girl playing in the front lawn, hurrying the truck, running in the house, getting money, coming back out. That's it.
Pretty basic, no other details?
Couldn't tell you anything else.
Okay,
Sadly.
so you're just a low details person for this?
Clearly.
Okay, great, perfect. How about you, Kelsey?
I envisioned a little girl that was probably about 5, was blonde, hair in a ponytail, ran in her house, got her money out of her piggy bank, and ran back out.
Any other details, like the ice cream truck color, or?
No.
No? Okay. So we had, and thank you, give them all a round of applause, because that's hard to come up in front of your colleagues. So looking at that demonstration, I had one sentence. And we had 6 people that are all eye doctors, all in the eye care profession, and yet, what did they tell me for their descriptions? Were they all the same? Were they all different? They were all very different. So James had a different explanation than Brian, than Kelsey, than Travis, or excuse me, Nick, excuse me. So that goes to show you, let's say I want to talk to my team about, hey, I want an amazing patient experience when they come to my practice. In my head, it means you're going to stand up, you're going to shake their hands, you're going to use their name, you're going to guide them to where they're going to go, and blah, 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 all the steps that I have envisioned. But if I don't really tell them my explanation of what it means to me, their explanation or their definition of a great patient experience may be, oh, hi, come on in. What are we doing for you today? I'm here for an eye exam. So you'll get your front team doing it 5 different ways if you have 5 different people up there, because you never set that clear explanation for that teammate. So we like to turn this into a game in our practice, to say the least. We actually apply it as a verb sometimes. So we will normalize that people will see things differently. And so if we have a conversation with a teammate, say, hey, I really like, I'm passionate about the patient experience. Let's ice cream chuck this, because I think we might be on the wrong page or a different page. And we talk about it, and we set our expectations and work through it. And it's really easy to do this once it's non-threatening to the individual, because it's in your practice. They know we're going to ice cream truck certain things. So just think about that when you have an expectation for a tech to, let's say, do an OCT. You might say, yep, go grab an optic nerve head's OCT. Well, if you didn't explain exactly how they were supposed to get that OC done perfectly, maybe they were off axis, maybe, X, Y, Z, you're not going to get the perfect result, because we weren't on the same page. We didn't tell them exactly what we needed. So if you have inconsistencies with something you were trying to initiate with your team, say, you know what, I think we're all on a different page here. Let's ice cream truck this. And allow them to tell you what their expectation in their mind was. And you'll be surprised. It's like, oh, that was completely different. As you saw, 6 completely different answers. Yes, there was a girl, there was an ice cream truck, there was money, but you saw all those different variables there. So that's tool number 1.
And before I jump into tool number 2, David said it, but I'm going to just hit it a little more. The big thing is you want people to understand it's actually really normal that they picture something different than you. It's normal that you didn't all agree on something, and this gives you a way to safely tell someone, I see it differently, let's talk through it. They feel way less in trouble. They'll start using the tool too. It gives them a tool to talk to their coworkers, or for 2 coworkers to come to you and say, we actually have something being done 3 different ways. We're not sure what we should do. So they might not always say the word ice cream truck, but if you demonstrate this scenario to them, help them know it's normal, the more they realize it's normal, the more they'll start to problem solve on their own and have the conversations on their own instead of you needing to help facilitate all of them.
And before you go, I'm not sure if Travis is still in here. Okay, if you have questions, text Travis and he can tell me. I don't know if there'll be questions, but
yeah.
I don't think I want to give my number out to everybody, but I can.
So the next tool, we call it now, soon, and later language. I want to start with a little story, and I need to think of a name that we've never had a staff member named, because I don't want to give away. We'll use Nancy. That's my mother-in-law's name. She's never worked for us. But so we used to be in a smaller space, and we had this tiny little staff bathroom. There were 10 people working there, so in between exams you'd peek, is the light on underneath there? Oh yay, I can finally go to the bathroom. Let me squeeze this in before I go to my next patient, who I'm 20 minutes behind for. And I would come out of the bathroom, and Nancy would be standing there with her yellow little list and her pen, and she'd be ready to drill me with all the questions that had come up that morning. And, you know, maybe I've just referred an emergency case and we're worried about a tumor, or I was just sitting with a widow who I've seen her and her husband year after year, and she came in alone this year. So I've had this heavy clinical morning, and Nancy comes to me and goes, do you know the coffee pot's not working in the waiting room? I don't care. Here's the thing though, as a leader, you don't get to say, I don't care, for one thing. It's dismissive, it's rude, but this story is a good example of when priorities don't align and people don't know they don't align, it causes a lot of friction. The reality was, Nancy was standing there waiting with her list of questions because she knew I wasn't going to be available that day. I wasn't being a good leader and letting her know when I would be available, promising that I would make time in my schedule to address staff concerns before we had a practice manager to do those type of things. So what Now, Soon, and Later does is creates a safe way for you to say, I don't have time for that now, but we'll get to it. So every department, I'm sure you run into this, whether it's your patient care coordinators at your front desk versus your technicians, your opticians, and your docs, they all think they work harder than every other department because when they walk by so-and-so, they're just sitting there. You've probably run into that where you're waiting for a referral phone call, you're trying to get some charts done in between patients, and staff come with questions because they think you're not working. It goes both directions, but what Now, Soon, Later does, it makes it safe, and here's what happens. When someone comes to me, and I'm not wearing my leader hat right now, I'm being a clinician and I've got something important going on, they come to me and they say, hey Robyn, can I catch you for a minute? I'm allowed to say, is this a now, a soon, or a later? And because they know this language and know what it means, it's not this threatening thing of, is it really important? Well, to them it might be important. So they're allowed to say, actually it's a soon, and I'll say, great, I'm gonna catch you before I head to lunch. If I forget, be sure to remind me. It's not dismissive, it's not rude, it's letting them know I have something really important going on even if it doesn't look like it, but I respect that what you're bringing is important too. A later is more of a, hey, I have an idea and I'd love to run it by you before our next staff meeting because if you think it's a good idea, I'll share it with everyone. Sure, let's talk, make sure we talk by the end of the week. If they tell you it's a now, you have to drop what you're doing and believe that is a now because you need to respect them. Now, here's what's hard for docs. It goes the other direction too. How many of you, I shouldn't even say that, all of you at one point have headed to your front desk, given them a pile of stuff and said, I need you to do this right now. We didn't even ask what they might be working on. Maybe their project is more important than what we're handing them. They are allowed to also say, I'm actually really in the middle of something. Is this a now? And can I set it aside until this afternoon, or do you need me to switch right now? So the language goes in both directions. And same thing as the ice cream truck. Once people have approached you with different priorities like that long enough, they might not always use the actual language now, sooner or later, but they're less threatened. They know you respect them. They know it's normal to shift things around forward or backwards because it's been explained. So try teaching your staff that you won't always understand what's important in the moment. It might not be important to them, but it's important to you, or vice versa. And practice using the phrase, hey, is this a now, a soon, or a later? And if it's a soon or a later, the worst thing you can do is forget to go back to them. If you do that, everything will become a now. So
talk about nows just a little bit more. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Or do you want me to?
Well, yeah. There was one day we came back from lunch. This was still our old space. I was getting ready to head into an exam, and my tech came back and said, Robyn, we need you in the waiting room. It is a now. Okay. And the dental floor upstairs forgot to turn the sinks off, and our waiting room was raining. She was right. It was a now. We needed to make some calls upstairs and get some things taken care of.
But let's say somebody comes to you, a teammate comes to you and say, Dr. Bauer, I need to talk to you something. I'm like, okay, is this a now, soon, later? If they say, this is a now, okay, I'm gonna drop what I'm doing. And they talk to me, it's like, well, I really think we should just get some hot chocolate and some vanilla coffee in the waiting room. I'll be like, okay, let's think on that. In their mind, that was a now. In my mind, I'm like, that is a way later down the road. So in those scenarios, when they come to you with the now, hear them out, because you have to, because in their mind it is super important. After the conversation, say, you know what, I think we might need to ice cream truck the now scenario, because getting a different flavor of coffee for the patients is probably later. And then if they keep doing it, ice cream truck some more. But if they come to you with a now, then you need to do it. Because if you, like Robyn said, let's say they say it's a sooner or later, and you never get back to them, like you said you would, everything all of a sudden switches to a now, because they know that they are going to get your attention. But if it's not a now, talk through them or coach them and tell them, you know what, I don't think that was a now that I have to drop an urgent referral to retina because we have coffee. That type of a deal. So always, if it's a sooner or later, follow up, because otherwise everything is then a now. Russell.
Just a quick question, organizationally for your guys' clinic, do you have a built-in system for later? Meaning, that's going to be one-on-one time or team time, or how important do you think that is?
We do have a system.
So the question was, organizational-wise for us, do we have a system set up for the sooner or later, how we get that done? So I'll have Krystin talk about that.
Yeah, so we do have several systems. So the first system is monthly temp checks, and those are rarely, if ever, missed. So the team member knows I'm going to have undivided time with my team lead to go over these questions, and that happens every month. We also have department huddles. We have those daily for some departments where they can bring those things up. They also sometimes have them weekly. And then the other avenue that we have is interdepartment huddles that happen once a month, where that kind of helps with the information silos, where they can, talk through those types of things, but also procedural changes that have happened in other departments that might be affecting them. So we do have several avenues for the soon and the later.
And I'll give just a doc perspective on that too. You might be thinking more of, I'm walking into the ER or the OR and someone's saying, hey, I need to talk to you by the end of the week. We've got this later thing. And you're like, I'm not going to remember. It's okay to expect more communication from your staff and say, that sounds great. Send me an email to make sure I don't forget. Like, you can put some responsibility on them of not just throwing something at you and expecting you to remember.
Yeah, 'cause my team knows if they tell me something, 2 minutes later, I'm going to forget. So I always say, hey, send me a tiger, that's our inter-office message system, or a task in their system, because I said, I will forget. Send me that, a tiger or a task, because it'll be gone. One thing about the intercommunication or inter-department huddles, this is silly, but I never knew a paperclip had a correct way and a wrong way. Who knew? But when their front team would put a paperclip on our super bill that went back with the patient and doctors throughout the office, the techs would get really mad because the paperclip wasn't right. Because when they put the autorefractor and the FDT and all their forms underneath there, they pull it off and it would rip the paper. So that was something that came to us, and we said, that's a good later. And they did it in the interdepartment huddles, and it solved it. Just easy things like that makes the team dynamic better.
Mm-hmm. We've also, one organization we work with that we've worked with on common language, they now have a rule that any email that's sent within their organization has to have now, sooner, later in the title to help them prioritize when they get to their inbox and there's 10 messages. They don't have to sit there and click through and, oh wait, let me sift that to later and stuff. So they'll actually include it in any of their written communication with each other to simplify.
All right, so moving on to the third tool. This is the last tool. I'm going to throw out some more scenarios and see if this has happened to anybody. Has anyone ever come up to you and said, hey, can I talk to you later? And then given no other information, and your brain immediately goes, oh no, what terrible thing is going to be happening? You know, what's wrong now? And you walk into that meeting and you are on high alert. You're flustered, maybe you've blanked out. That's happened to me for sure. Or maybe you overpromise something. So that can be where an employee comes to you and says, hey, can we make this change? And you look at it and you say, that seems pretty simple. I think we can go ahead and do that, yeah. And then it turns out you didn't think about, do we have the resources? Do we have the time to make that change? Does it contradict any existing policies that we have? Or, you know, is the rest of the leadership team going to be on board with this change? Example of this that just recently happened, it still happens to me years later. It's a good reminder for me, but we have automatic blinds in our optical dispensary. And in the summertime, it's bright. And I know that it gets bright, and so an optician came to me and said, hey, can we lower these blinds? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead, lower them. And a patient care coordinator was in my office the same day saying, if these are closed, it gets really dark in here, and that's not a great, you know, look for our patients. And I was like, oh, yes, that's right. So I thought it was easy. I thought I was solving an easy problem. And I'm reminded every day about this tool. Or there's an HR issue. An employee comes to you, asks you an HR type question, and you think, as a leader, I am supposed to know the answer. So you blurt something out, and then you're laying in bed that night and thinking, oh man, I wish I would have said something different there, because I definitely have also done that. But here's the thing, in all of those situations, you actually don't have to answer immediately. Not answering immediately doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. It means that you are giving yourself permission to think, permission to give a thoughtful answer. So there's a psychologist, his name is Daniel Kahneman. And he's a psychologist, but he won the Nobel Peace Prize for economics. It's a pretty interesting story, but he wrote a book, and it's called Thinking, Fast and Slow, where he talks about two systems of thought. System one is the automatic, the quick, the emotional part of our brains. It's kind of the reptilian part of our brain. And then system two is the more logical, slow, deliberate thinking part of our brain. It's the prefrontal cortex part of our brain. Both systems have value, for sure. You want to have both of those systems. But in stressful, high-pressure situations at work, especially, we sometimes lean too heavily on that fast think system, and that's where we get into trouble. That's where we blurt out those answers that we wish that we could take back. So in our practice, we have actually started normalizing using those words. We've given them definitions. We messaged these. It's not like we have used this term once and expect people to listen and understand and remember. We constantly message it. So we talk about how fast think is that knee-jerk response, that kind of quick answer. And we talk about how slow think is taking a pause. It's giving yourself a chance to process and give a thoughtful answer. So what that can sound like in your practice is simply saying, you know what, that's a great question. I'm gonna slow think on that, and then I'm gonna get back to you. With those HR type questions early on in my career, I wish that I had this tool in my back pocket. There were so many times where I wish I would have said, you know what, let me slow think on that and I'm gonna get back to you. Because that would have worked out much better in the long run. But we have a video here that's gonna illustrate the difference between the two systems a little bit more.
You may not realize it, but your brain actually processes information in two very distinct ways. Like when you look at this photo, you instantly know she has blonde hair, is visibly angry, and likely has some choice words to yell. Without any effort, you experienced fast thinking. But if you look at the following problem, something different happens. Sure, you immediately know it's a multiplication problem, and you knew you could solve it if you had the energy, but didn't. If you do try, your muscles will tense, your pupils will dilate, and your heart rate will increase. Now, you've experienced slow thinking. These two systems of fast and slow thinking dictate much of our perception and reaction in life. Take these lines, for example. It's clear that they're different lengths, but if you measure them, they're actually the exact same length. Even now that you know, System 1, or your fast thinking, can't stop seeing the illusion because it acts automatically. A similar effect is seen here. Which figure is the largest? Again, they're all the same size, but the suggestion of perspective and depth causes your System 1 to interpret the picture as three-dimensional, even though it's on a flat two-dimensional surface. It's making quick work of the available information, and so your conscious System 2, or slow thinking, must compensate after the fact and choose not to believe your intuition or instinct. Want to see your System 2 in action? I'll show you a string of 4 digits, you read them aloud, then add 1 to each of the original digits. If the card reads 3795, the correct response would be 4806. We'll then go to the next card and you'll do the same, followed by the next card. Ready? Go. Few people can cope with more than 4 digits, but even harder is add 3. The interesting bit is that though your pupils would have dilated, you often become effectively blind when you fully engage System 2. Did you notice the color of the text change? Or how about the fact that the numbers completely changed when I put them off to the side? Listen to the following puzzle. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Chances are your System 1 intuition was yelling 10 cents. But this appealing System 1 answer we know is wrong. In fact, the correct answer is 5 cents. Even if you worked out the correct answer, you likely thought of 10 cents along the way. System 1 is trying to work out an answer as quickly and seamlessly as possible, which is extremely beneficial in everyday life. If every activity required full mental effort, it would be exhausting. But knowing this allows us to understand that not all of our first impressions are correct. How many animals of each kind did Moses take into the ark? So few people detect what is wrong with this question that it's been dubbed the Moses illusion. In fact, Moses took no animals, Noah did. Again, our brain invests as little resources as necessary so that things run quickly and smoothly. Because Moses is not abnormal in the biblical context, System 1 unconsciously detects an association between Moses and ark and quickly accepts the question. In a similar way, System 1 generates context without you knowing. Reading each of the following may seem fairly simple. A, B, C, Anne approached the bank, and 12, 13, 14. But your brain actually interpreted these ambiguous statements without you ever knowing. You could have read it as A, 13C, or 12, B, 14, but your brain created the context unconsciously. Also, you likely imagined a woman with money on her mind walking towards a building with tellers. But if the sentence before this was, they were floating gently down the river, the entire scene would have changed because bank is no longer associated with money. Without an explicit context, System 1 quickly generates one based on previous experience. In this case, you've likely visited more banks than rivers, and so the context is resolved accordingly. This ties into a concept called priming. For example, if I said wash, how would you complete this word fragment? Most would see soap, but had I just shown you the word eat, you'd be more likely to see soup. In this way, both eat and wash prime your thoughts. Though System 2 likes to think that it's in charge and knows what's going on, the truth is that priming effects have even been shown to affect and modify behavior. These arise in System 1, and you have no conscious access to them. If you'd like to learn more about the thinking systems in your brain, check out the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, which covers it in great detail. I'll put a link in the description which you can check out. Got a burning question you want answered? Ask it in the comments or on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe for more weekly science videos.
All right, so that Moses example is exactly what I was talking about, the fast thinking, that quick automatic response. So now that we know a little bit more about the two systems, fast think, slow think, let's bring that back to a practice setting. And if you don't remember anything else from this tool, this is the one that I want you to remember. And it reiterates what Robyn and David already said. You might notice the trend, which is if you tell someone that you're gonna slow think and you need to get back to them, you actually have to follow up with them. Because if you don't, when you say slow think, that's gonna look like an excuse. It's going to look like you are avoiding. So you have to follow up, because then people are gonna start to trust that you give them something real, not just whatever came to mind first. And then if you've ever given a fast think answer, that can be fixed. I know in the moment sometimes it feels like it can't be fixed, like you've just made the worst mistake, but it's always fixable. And it's actually a really simple script. You just can come back the next day, next hour, and you can say, you know what? I was thinking about our conversation and I realized that I gave a fast think answer. And after doing some slow thinking, here's what I actually want to do, or here's what we should do next. So it feels like a big deal, but you can always go back and fix those fast think answers. And that kind of honesty doesn't weaken your credibility as a leader, as a doctor. It actually strengthens it, because your team is seeing you being willing to be real. And vulnerability coming from a leader or from a doctor makes a huge impact on the team dynamic. So the more that you use this language, slow think, fast think, the more your staff is going to use it too. You're gonna start to hear, oh, let's slow think that. Or, oh, I actually gave a fast think answer there. And what happens is your team is going to start normalizing that thoughtful is better than instant. And that's a cultural shift. That's gonna make your practice actually stronger. So the next question is, how do you put these tools into place? But I think Robyn has something she wants to share first.
Yeah, and Krystin actually just hit it. She said it's normal. And that's the thing with all of these tools, is it does help people realize if they made a mistake or they communicated poorly, it is normal. And these tools give them a chance to undo it or to explain it or to expect forgiveness quickly. There's other times where people will recognize, I don't want someone to fast think this. I want them to think through it, because I thought through it a long time before I was ready to share this idea. A good example is David. A couple of our team leads know that anytime they bring an idea to him, his automatic fast think answer is no. Every time. And they know that. And then he'll come a week later and be like, oh, I was thinking about this. And we're like, no, they gave you that idea. It wasn't your idea. So these team leads actually will come to David with ideas, and they will say, hey, David, I want to share an idea. I don't need an answer today. Take some time to slow think this. Like, they literally won't let him say no right away. So it does work into your culture. If you use it regularly enough, people will find different ways to use it, which is really helpful. So.
All right, we only have about 2 minutes left, but if there's any questions, we can answer some questions if needed. But, you know, I think there's several practices here that have more than one person from the practice, which is great, because there's 2 or more of you that can take this back to your practice and easily implement these things. You know, we went through lots of conferences, leadership conferences, things like that, and we are always pumped when we come back from AOA or MOA or any type of leadership growth development conference that we go to. And then we get back and we're like, that was exciting, but I don't know what to do now. And it always frustrates us when we go to a conference and pay money and invest our time away from the practice, and it's like, oh, okay, now what? So we always like to, when we lecture, give actionable items. So we gave you 3 actionable items today that will easily be able to be implemented fairly quickly. It takes time to actually get everybody on board, but messaging is huge. So go to your practices and implement it. Because with having common language like this, communication for you to teammates, teammates to you, and coworkers to coworkers is more safe. It's clearer, more consistent, and they're going to trust you more and be more open to share ideas, which is huge. So the question is, like I said, how are you going to make this happen? So a couple things that we always like to do when we are trying to implement a change or a new system or whatever it is in our practices, we need to know the who and the when. So if you're going to do a new pre-testing protocol, okay, who's in charge of that? And you write it down. The next thing you have to do is, what is the deadline? Because if nobody writes down who's in charge, nobody's in charge, or if everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge. It's probably not going to get done. Everybody will be like, we talked about that a month ago, but what happened to that? Nobody was in charge. So you always have to put a leader in charge of a project and also put a timeline on it. You might be ambitious with your timeline, say, we can get that done in 3 days. And then 3 days happens. It's okay to push back a deadline. It's not okay to miss a deadline. So we don't want to have Krystin going to a teammate and be like, that was supposed to be done 2 days ago. Why didn't you tell me? If you know you're going to be late on a deadline, before the deadline, tell whoever you need to tell, hey, this actually should have been at this timeline. I need to adjust that. Is that okay? So always the who and the when it's going to be done. So I'm glad that we have this. Optometry is a very tight-knit profession in Montana, and if we can raise all of our practices up, a rising tide raises all boats. If we can all be better, Montana will be. It already is an amazing place for optometry, but we can just all rise. That's a great thing. So, any questions from the audience? Did we get any? Anybody want to be just brave and throw out a question? Russell?
On the point of accountability, what are your thoughts on having a group of leaders accountable for something versus a singular person accountable?
So the question was on accountability, having a group being accountable or a single person. A group is great, but it's kind of like everyone's in charge.
A group of doctors is not great.
So you really need to pick out a leader of that group.
Checks in on with your deadline.
Because it gets back to the point of if everybody owns it, then nobody owns it. We have a doctor-led, professionally managed team. So I work really closely with the doctors to set the vision. Who should be accountable for that? I work really closely with them, but then they turn it over to me and the other non-doc, non-clinical leadership to bring it to life. So we work closely together, but we have two very different roles.
Great question. Any other questions? All right, I think we got a little bit of time till the next one. So thanks, guys.